So I wanted to talk again about ChatGPT, obviously very much in the news. I actually did a talk over the weekend to African women in GIS, which was interesting. The questions were good. And it made me think as I was doing the presentation and answering the questions a little bit more about this whole world, ChatGPT and GeoChatGPT that I've been talking a lot about. I think it's interesting that we now talk AI, and AI used to be this sort of background, well, not used to be, it continues to be this background process where we process and analyze things, we automate processes to take some of the human parts away from that, but doesn't take humans right out of the equation. ChatGPT has brought that front and center, so it's gone from background to foreground, and we're now very aware that we can now use AI. And it's actually interesting to listen to Sam Altman, the guy that is in charge of OpenAI, talk about AGI, artificial general intelligence. That's what ChatGPT and generative AI is being called. So it's sort of our interface into AI. And I think that's why ChatGPT has become such a big topic, because again, it's in our faces now, we can use it. I think about the things that I've started to see within the geospatial world. And again, some while ago, we started thinking about that, a small group of us, and that's where GeoChatGPT came from. There's kind of a danger to run to the end before you go through the process of getting there. I'll give you an example of this. I worked with an organization that had a guy who was he was put into a place where he was driving the charge towards innovation and a new business. And he set up two meetings within the organization. The first one was to get groups of people together to ideate. From those meetings, the second meeting was go to market. So the jump was from idea to go to market. And we're always trying to go to market really quickly with things, which is why lots of products, lots of MVPs end up on the shelf never being used, because we miss the steps in between. I think there's a danger within what we're doing at the minute of us talking about the end point and not the journey to get to the end point. So I see lots of people testing out how to take a chatbot and create maps from that. So that's kind of where the focus is. I have my thinking behind that is that's the similar to scenario to what I've just spoken about. There are steps in between getting to that output, and that's kind of where I've had my focus, and the guys that I chat with have the most focus. So let's think about that journey within geospatial and generative AI. The first thing we need to realize is the problem that is input by a user is actually part of the problem discovery process. People are inputting a need for something. That's a really critical piece that we mustn't ever forget. I think in geospatial, we struggle to do problem discovery very well. We often build solutions and end up looking for problems. This journey with ChatGPT and GeoChatGPT, generative AI, allows us up front to actually get input from users, which essentially are problems. So that's a critical thing to think through. I think the other piece within geospatial that I've often spoken about is, and that's why I harp on about the importance of geographers. Geographers are really good dot connectors. We're not button pushers creating maps. Our real skill set is connecting dots. And I think that there is a missing piece in the geospatial world, which are those translators, those folks that can not only tease out problems, but can then also map out that journey to a solution without building the solution. That's a technical folks' job. But the interface between customers who have problems and technical folks who can provide solutions. I think that's another piece that GeoChatGPT and the generative AI world is going to help us solve, but there is a challenge there. So an input to a question that might be asked by a user needs to actually have the first pieces put in place. What data do we need to solve this problem? And I call that ingredients in the recipe analogy. And then what is that recipe? What are the instructions to actually get to that end point, that solution? So before we build anything, there are two really critical pieces. And I argued that ChatGPT will never have a database that will allow one to have that amount of information, a level of granularity. So it means a separate, again, the base of GeoChatGPT is to build a separate database that is very granular in the way it can actually analyze that problem that somebody inputs into it. So it knows what ingredients, what data is needed, and it knows how to take that journey all the way through to a solution. Before the solution is built, One other point I would make is we don't any longer live in a 2D mapping world. So if we're only thinking about outputting 2D maps, that's okay if organizations are 2D map centric, but the journey to using solution as data-based, location-based data is just a multi-dimensional journey now. So 2D maps, again, I've done this in other talks, 2D maps present information in certain ways, giving certain amounts of insight. You can load a lot of data, you can see patterns, you can see relationships, etc., etc. But 3D gives a sense of place. 3D gives the ability to enrich data that, as if I was standing there, data that I couldn't get if I was standing there. Digital can do that. We can put 3D trees in, we can put point data that's very specific around certain things related to those trees, where the power line is, there's some line data, etc. So we can take 3D, give people a sense of place and enrich that data. We can also do 4D, where we bring in real-time data into that scenario. So the world of geospatial is much more complex now than just a 2D map. If we're effectively going to build out a ChatGPT solution, or again, a generative AI solution, we have to know that the output is potentially going to be multi-dimensional data that we're going to be using. So what are those data sets? What are the solutions, software solutions that ultimately enable folks to get to that endpoint? All that's needed before we ever produce anything. So to try to jump from the problem to an output is, in my view, a mistake. There's a lot of steps in between, and those steps in between will be the critical pieces that are going to mean that what we build moving forward is successful or unsuccessful. So it's a kind of a cautionary tale, this one, but as I was talking on over the weekend, and as I thought, and the other guys that we talked through this stuff together, we realized that there's a journey that we have to be on before we ever start really thinking about the output. And the output piece is obviously the most complex, but the instructions and fuel which go into that output are the things that are going to mean the output is actually something that answers the question or doesn't answer the question. So anyway, thanks for watching. I always welcome your thoughts and feedback on any of this stuff. So let me know if you agree or disagree. Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching.